Welcome to A Wayfinder's Guide to Life, a podcast for entrepreneurs and leaders who've checked all the boxes and still feel something deeper calling. This is a space for stories, soul, and walking the wild path home. I'm Mike Bursick, adventurer, entrepreneur, and founder of Wayfinders. Pack light, walk slow, we're heading into the unknown. Welcome back. You've already said yes. You've stepped off the map, crossed the threshold, and begun to walk a new path. Congratulations. But now the terrain is shifting. The air is heavier, quieter. The clarity you expected hasn't arrived. Instead, old fears are resurfacing. Doubt is louder than your dream. And the ground beneath you feels anything but solid. This is the trial. In mythology, the hero always encounters a trial. Luke in the cave on Dagobah, facing the illusion of Darth Vader, only to find his own face beneath the mask. Frodo staggering beneath the weight of the ring, tempted to abandon it all. Moana standing alone at the edge of the sea, not knowing if she'll find anything on the other side. The trial is not some external gauntlet. It's not dragons and evil enemies and grand battles. It's you, meeting yourself in the quiet, your own internal enemies. It's everything unresolved surfacing when the noise finally dies down. And it is sacred. Over the course of this season, we've traced the path of the Wayfinder's journey, looking at midlife through the lens of the classic hero's journey. From hearing the call, to resisting it, to crossing the threshold, to descending into the unknown. Each stage has been a shedding, a turning toward the truth that something deeper is asking to be lived. And now, here we are at the trial. This is the crucible that asks, were you serious when you said yes? Do you really want what your soul has been whispering about? Or was it just a nice idea? Most of us think that saying yes to a new life, a more soulful business, a more aligned relationship, a deeper path, means clarity, flow, ease. But that's just the prologue. The real journey begins when the path vanishes underfoot, and you're left to find your way by feel. And what you find there, if you stay with it long enough, is not just discomfort, but the raw materials of transformation. The trial is here to test your resolve, to assess your commitment to truth in your own path, to see how you respond to adversity. Will you meet your challenges with courage, with presence, humility? Or will you back off and revert to safety? Will you bargain with your soul or double down on alignment? I've faced many trials over my 54 years. Each one has marked a slow evolution toward a truer version of myself. But one, in particular, flipped the script. It involved the lure of something new and an unexpected return to the old. I was 34 and in the depths of what I described in the last episode as a 2-year dark night of the soul, a depression that was consuming me. My company, Sacred Rides, offered mountain bike adventures in British Columbia, but I had moved back to Toronto to face the darkness that had overtaken me. It was there that I met David, the therapist I spoke about in the episode on guides. Among other work, we spent months exploring my career, where my energy was going, and what my soul truly wanted. I was close to folding the business. It no longer felt right. It no longer felt like me. David and I explored alternatives. Eventually, I landed on becoming a naturopath focused on natural approaches to treating cancer. My father had died of brain cancer, and much of my work with David centered around finally grieving his death. This new path felt purposeful and meaningful. I applied to naturopathic college and was accepted. My next chapter seemed clear. And yet, something in me hesitated. It felt tidy, a little too neat. Like I had found a convenient answer to a question my soul was still asking. Around that same time, an email landed in my inbox. A Peruvian named Wayo had a small mountain bike tour company, and he was looking for a partner to expand his offerings to the North American market. He invited me to come ride and explore the possibilities. So on a whim, I said yes, and I brought a couple of journalist friends with me. What followed was one of my most mind-blowing travel experiences. Rural villages, ancient trails, big mountain descents, and incredible connections. Something stirred awake in me. Not just the thrill of adventure, but a sense of soul remembering. The experience took me back to a seminal 6-month trip I took through Southeast Asia when I was 20. It awakened in me the same thrill of discovery. I turned down the naturopathic program, launched our first tours in Peru, and began a 15-year global expansion. The first decade of those 15 years felt completely aligned with my soul, my joy, and my sense of purpose. Eventually, though, I outgrew that company. A new wayfinding journey began. But I share this to remind you, the hero's journey doesn't always require abandoning the past. Sometimes the path leads you back to the familiar, but with new eyes. Eyes that can finally see through the lens of the soul. The trial doesn't ask if you're brave enough to start something new. It asks if you're devoted enough to listen to your truth, no matter where it leads. The trial in midlife looks different than in our youth. It's not about conquering the world. It's about facing the inner world we've avoided, the grief we never made time for, the doubt we buried under accolades, the parts of ourselves we hope to outrun by building successful careers or companies or identities. The trial asks, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when your latest launch doesn't land? Or when your big idea meets resistance? Who are you without the validation, the likes, spreadsheets, the praise? If you're an entrepreneur leaving behind something that once defined you, or stepping into something entirely new, you'll meet this moment. It might show up as silence where there used to be momentum, uncertainty where there used to be a plan. You may think you're simply launching a new offer or entirely new business, but what is actually being tested is your resilience, your alignment, your willingness to stay true to your soul when the only feedback you hear is the sound of crickets. Side note, from an ROI perspective, there's absolutely no justification for me putting in the hours I do into this podcast. But something compels me to do it week after week. It's something I feel called to put out in the world, even if no one listens. That said, I do appreciate it when people listen and follow and comment and leave ratings and reviews. So please don't let me stop you from doing any of those things just because my soul feels a need to express itself in podcast form. So this is the initiation, the part where you begin to question not just your strategy, but your identity. The part where you wake up at 3 a.m. wondering if you made a mistake, if you were foolish to let go of something that at least made sense to others. But this is also the part where clarity is forged, not from control or certainty, but from fire. The trial is not punishment, it is preparation. You will be tempted to distract, to overwork, to tinker endlessly with the website instead of sitting with the fear. But the real work, the sacred work, is sitting in the silence and letting it speak. As the poet John O'Donohue reminds us, in the silence you will meet yourself. That is both the fear and the gift. And if you dare to stay, to soften, to breathe into the discomfort, you will begin to hear a different voice. Not the inner critic or the anxious planner, but the voice beneath that. The voice of the soul. The voice that does not shout, but sings. I'd be remiss if I didn't return to a story I first shared in episode 4, The Descent. The story of summiting Mount Cotopaxi in Ecuador. This time I want to tell it to you through the lens of the trial, because it was one of the most physical trials I've ever faced. Cotopaxi was the culmination of an 8-day Wayfinder's adventure I led in March of 2024. At nearly 20,000 feet, it's Ecuador's second highest peak, and one of the world's tallest active volcanoes. I had trained for months, 3 weight sessions each week, 2 intense cardio days. I hired a breathwork coach to prepare for the thin air. I even wore a weighted vest and oxygen-restricting mask around the house. I did everything I could to give myself the best possible shot at standing on that summit. And then, 4 days before summit day, I got sick. Really sick, struggling to breathe, struggling just to climb the stairs of our hacienda. I had to hand off the group to my co-facilitator Justin and spent 3 days in bed trying to recover. One day before the summit, the storm in my lungs finally began to lift. By the time we'd left the mountain refugio at 11 p.m. the next day, I was about 80% recovered. Cotopaxi is not the kind of mountain you climb at 80%. But, as foolish as it may have been, I was not going to walk away after all that training. The climb was brutal. At 16,000 feet, every step felt like its own trial. By 5:45 a.m., 7 hours into the climb, the summit came into view, just 300 feet above us. But I was completely spent. My body had nothing left. I wanted nothing more than to leave that mountain. If a helicopter had landed next to me, I would have climbed in without hesitation. Then the guide asked me to put on a gas mask. The volcanic fumes near the summit were getting stronger. But I was already struggling to breathe, and the thought of putting that mask over my face was too much to bear. This was the moment, my trial. Turn back, and Justin would have to come with me. Give in, and it would mean 4 months of training, planning, and dreaming undone. It would mean believing the voice inside that said I was not strong enough, that I didn't belong up there. But I picked myself up off the glacier. I told the guide I couldn't wear the mask, but I still wanted to continue. And I took a step, and then another. "45 agonizing minutes later, I stood on the summit, delirious, destroyed, and transformed. The descent was even harder, but I came away with something far more profound than a summit photo. I found my strength, I found my edge, and I learned that when everything in me wanted to give up, I still had the will to take one more step. That is the essence of the trial. It's not about ease or heroics. It's about choosing to continue, even when you have every reason to stop. It's about remembering who you are and what you've committed to when everything in you wants to forget. So if you're standing at the edge of your own trial, maybe launching something new or leaving something behind, know this: you are not doing it wrong. This is the path. There's wisdom in the silence. There's medicine in the stillness. And there's a version of you waiting on the other side. Not one with all the answers, but one with better questions. One who is finally listening. I'll close off with a few soul prompts about the trial for your journaling pleasure or discomfort. Where in my life am I showing up out of fear rather than alignment? What would I do differently if I believed the trial was sacred and necessary, not a mistake or a punishment? What is emerging in me through this struggle, and what is asking to be released? You'll find these prompts in the show notes. And here's a practice. Write a letter from your future self 1 year from now, who has passed this trial with grace and courage. Let them speak to you about what mattered, what didn't, and what surprised them. Let them remind you why you began. Then write a short, clear commitment statement. 1 sentence. Start with, "I commit to," and make it about your path, your soul's truth, your next step. Keep it close. Say it aloud each morning for the next week. The trial is about remembering. Remembering who you are, why you started, and who you're becoming. Pack light, walk slow, and trust the trial. Thanks for walking a while with me today. If this conversation stirred something in you, I'd be honored if you take a moment to leave a review in your podcast platform. Reviews are how this podcast finds its way to others who might be standing at the same threshold, wondering if there's more waiting for them too. And they're a great way to make a deposit into your karmic bank account. If and when you're ready to go deeper, here are 3 ways. You can join one of my upcoming adventures with Wayfinders, where I gather entrepreneurs and leaders in midlife in some of the wildest and most beautiful places around the world to reconnect with self, with soul, and with each other. This coming October, I'm heading back to the wilds of Mongolia. In March of 2026, we'll explore the deserts of the Sinai Peninsula with the Bedouins. And in October of 2026, I'm going back to the magical Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan. You can learn more at way-finders.com. If you're a fan of the written word, you can also subscribe to my Substack newsletter for weekly stories, reflections, and invitations into the quiet, meaningful corners of life. Finally, if you'd like to connect live with other soulful entrepreneurs, join our next online Soul Talks, a monthly conversation space for people walking this road with heart. You'll find all of these linked in the show notes. Until next time, may you walk gently, listen deeply, and trust the wild places within.